Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on?
Is it me or am I a super scroll?
No, it's still you.
Yeah,
And if you were a super scroll, you're a regular scroll at best.
that's
Yeah,
fair. I meant to say just regular scroll, but I said super scroll on accident. So,
all good. Today, as we do every week, we are diving into a Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. I realized I cut the rigmarole off halfway through and did introductions because it's just one of those kinds of days, I guess. But yes, today we're going to be talking all about Secret Invasion, the full first season, revisiting it after Cameron and I did the first two episodes about a month back. So yes, this series has just wrapped up, and we are going to dive into the full thing now. So as is often the case, full spoilers, all that stuff. Here be spoilers ahead. We're going to be diving into Secret Invasion episodes: Resurrection, Promises, Betrayed, Beloved, Harvest, and Home. And why are we doing this? Because it is the MCU thing that has just wrapped up, of course. Yeah, before we hop in a little bit, before we do like the rigmarole, especially because a lot of the bits and stuff are going to be the same as they were last time around. A lot of the same cast. I think maybe I've got like one or two other people in there. Um, Cameron, what was your viewing experience on this one? We talked in the last episode of like I
oh
wasn't
yeah,
planning on watching it week to week, but you were probably still going to try and keep up with it. Did that happen? Or
nope, not at
nope,
all. So
nope.
what ended up happening is, I started watching episode 3 and was just couldn't find myself getting into it. So I was like, you know what, um, I will wait for the rest of them, and so I did, and I watched them all over the last like 2-3 days. So
Gotcha. Yeah, my
a lot less intimidating than like a lot of the other ones are, right? Like a lot of the times it's like 12 episodes, 10 episodes. This one was just 6.
I mean, yeah, like a lot of them have been 6, maybe 8 episodes. So yeah, this one being a 6 episode run, it was like especially I did the same thing effectively. I basically like Tuesday caught up on episodes 3 through 5 that I had missed, and then basically watched episode 6 when it went live Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, before I went to bed. And it was especially like I started to look at like, oh, maybe I'll start catching up on the episodes Monday, and like do a couple a night or something like that to ease into it. And then I saw like, oh, after those first couple episodes, they dropped to like 30-40 minutes a runtime or something, or maybe about 40 minutes a piece. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just knock out all those in a couple hours and call it a day, basically. So yeah, that was kind of my experience with it. Yeah. All right, well, we will share our thoughts on it in a little bit. But as a refresher, history lesson here, these episodes released originally June 21st through July 26th, 2023. They ranged from 38 to 58 minutes in runtime. In the MCU timeline of things, we had Moon Knight back March through May of last year, followed by Miss Marvel in June and July, She-Hulk Attorney at Law August and October, Secret Invasion here a full year later, basically, from Miss Marvel, June and July of this year. Up next, we have Loki Season 2 coming out October through November, followed by Echo on November 29th. What If Season 2 is still out there sometime in the future, possibly late this year. Ironheart is TBD for 2024. Agatha Coven of Chaos is TBD 2024. And Daredevil Born Again is TBD 2024. All these things very contingent on writers and actors strikes being resolved, I would imagine, and or Disney's general realization that maybe they did too many things on the Disney Plus stuff, and maybe they'll start scrapping or cutting some of these items. Who knows? Our roll call here, as we mentioned previously, Ali Salim is our director for all 6 episodes, I believe. He's a TV director, having worked on projects like In Treatment, Criminal Minds, Manhunt, and The Calling. Excuse me. Our writers are Kyle Bradstreet and Brian Tucker. Kyle Bradstreet having written for Borgia, Copper, and Mr. Robot prior to this, and Brian Tucker having written Broken City. The original Secret Invasion storyline was also produced by Brian Michael Bendis, who we spoke of in the last time we talked about this. Many iconic Marvel storylines, including Ultimate Spider-Man, New Avengers, Avengers Disassembled, Secret War, House of M, Secret Invasion, Siege, and Age of Ultron. He's also the co-creator of Riri Williams, Miles Morales, and Jessica Jones. And in our cast of characters, a lot of these are, I think, probably all the same people that we talked about last time, but I've probably shifted them around in terms of order based on over the season they had more priority or more importance than the others. Of course, Samuel L. Jackson being our number one Nick Fury here, having played Nick Fury since the post-credits tease in the original Iron Man back in 2008, a whole 15 years ago. Of course, known from projects like Pulp Fiction, Snakes on a Plane, Hateful Eight, the prequel trilogy of Star Wars. Emilia Clarke playing Gaia, kind of elevated to second fiddle status in this one, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Having been in Game of Thrones, Terminator Genesis, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. Kingsley Benadir as Gravik, having been in Peaky Blinders, Noelle, High Fidelity series, and one that I didn't call out last time, but we've both seen him in Barbie as well, playing right now. So you can go see a very different Kingsley Benadir in Barbie. Don Cheadle, being way more than the cameo that I was anticipating at the beginning of the season, as Rhodey. Having played Rhodey since Iron Man 2 in 2010, also having been in stuff like Hotel Rwanda, the Ocean's 11 series, all that stuff. Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, having played Talos since Captain Marvel in 2019. He's also in the films Animal Kingdom, The Dark Knight Rises, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, Ready Player One, and the 2018 Robin Hood and Cyrano. Olivia Colman as Sonia Falsworth, having been in stuff like Broadchurch, The Favorite, and The Crown. Charlene Woodard, who had just been introduced for us last time around in episode 2, plays Priscilla/Vara, to give her Skrull name. She's been in films like Hair, The Crucible, and she played Samuel L. Jackson's mother in Unbreakable and Glass in the Shyamalan-verse. Dermot Mulroney as a President Britzen here, having been in My Best Friend's Wedding and New Girl. Christopher McDonald, some of these are just the cameos I called out last time. Christopher McDonald is Chris Stearns, the Fox News-esque host, who gets brutally gunned down at the close of this one. Mm-hmm. Having been in Happy Gilmore, Flubber, and a number of other character actor-y kind of things. Colby Smulders as Maria Hill, and got a whole bunch of credits for Maria Hill. It was always funny later in the season when the credits would hit and be special guest star Colby Smulders, and it's all you did was show footage from the first episode.
It counts.
Yeah. Maria Hill she got her start in the Avengers in 2012, and of course she was Robin in How I Met Your Mother. And Martin Freeman made a little return here at the end of the season, coming to out of his Skrull stupor sleep as Agent Everett Ross, having played Agent Ross since Captain America: Civil War in 2016. Is also known for his work in The Hobbit, the BBC Sherlock, and many other projects. A couple trivia things for this. In one of the Fury and Priscilla flashbacks, Priscilla hands over intel on Dreykov, who was the big bad of Black Widow, played by Ray Winston, and he was first mentioned all the way back in the original Avengers movie in 2012. So, kind of tying the the long-running SHIELD stuff together there. And when Rhodey talks about how he fired Nick Fury, I threw this one in here just for us.
Yeah.
He makes a wrestling reference by saying he DDT'd the dude from the third rope, and that it was Undertaker level. However, the DDT is a move that was actually invented and made famous by the wrestler Jake the Snake Roberts. The Undertaker is known much more for using the Tombstone Piledriver to finish his opponents. And so maybe a more fitting line would have been, "I slammed him through the cage like Mick Foley," if he's trying to make a DDT or an Undertaker reference. Anyway, just a weird like wrestling reference that felt
Off.
increasingly out of character for an already out of character Rhodey, because he's a Skrull.
Yeah. I will say also, even if you want to expand the Undertaker's like move roster, the Undertaker really doesn't utilize DDTs as a special maneuver at all.
Yeah. It's like, it's weird that like that's the move that he like latch onto, is like, oh, a DDT is a devastating move, when it's like, no, it's not. I mean, it used to be in the like days of Jake the Snake Roberts kind of thing, but
and everybody who takes one from Jake the Snake Roberts sells it because it's Jake the Snake Roberts move. And when he hits you with the DDT, you go down.
Yeah. In the same way that like a leg drop from Hulk Hogan or the People's Elbow from The Rock are not particularly devastating moves, but they are very fun sells. Anyway, that was it for the trivia. Just like hey, oh yeah, that was a reference they made. So Cam, you were way hotter on this after episode 2. Based on like the tease you gave me last night, I feel like that has probably changed. What did you think after seeing the full season here?
Oh, how the pendulum has swung. I am so just like bewilderedly disappointed in Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion should have been better. It just should have been. We're like, the way the first 2 episodes go and the way things that the first 2 episodes set up and the potential that it has going from those first 2 episodes is tremendous. And I cannot believe how poorly, let me rephrase it. I can't believe how boring the next 4 episodes are. I will say the action stuff, especially like the highway in Germany, the like the Skrull mutiny, like there's a lot of things about those action scenes that I think are actually really, really good. Gosh, but man, I was just so disappointed with so much else going on in that. I'm really disappointed with like how good, just make sure I like
Kingsley Benadir.
Yeah, Kingsley Benadir, with how good he is as an actor and with how well he sells this role. He has done an utter disservice by having a possibly one of the most shallow shallow villains in all of the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he had his scene with Talos at the like art museum.
Yeah.
Which is like also can't help but like evoke Killmonger vibes, and so he just kind of ends up coming across as Killmonger light.
I would agree with that, actually, yeah.
And then he has like, I think he came to life a little bit in the end when he's talking to Fury, Gaia as Fury, kind of thing.
That scene was great. But once again,
like other than that, he's kind of like wasted. He's just kind of the like miscellaneous, like, oh, he's a bad guy to be a bad guy. And I think like there's an element of it that I think is, I mean, none of it is like the actor's fault.
The actors are spectacular in this.
Yeah.
It is the definition of actors trying to turn a purse out of a pig's ear. It is just
I'm
rough
unfamiliar
stuff.
with the phrase, but yeah, it like so much of it I think suffers from the fact that it's like the entire stress that the Skrulls are going under and dealing with is an unforced one of like, okay, they've been in hiding for 30 years, but we haven't seen them in hiding for 30 years. We haven't experienced that. We didn't like, that's not a thing that has been particularly of concern to us, especially since they were only really introduced to us 4 years ago in Captain Marvel.
And not only that, but also it's like it's not like they can't survive. It's not like they can't exist. It's not like there is an oppressive government force like hunting them. Like there's a lot of ranges here about like how things could be way worse, and also it's like yeah, I don't. There's a lot of like frustrating choices that are made about it, like that just frustrate me, and I think that the biggest thing that I'm upset about is the biggest missed opportunity to reveal Gravik as like a Nick Fury Jr. basically. I propositioned thinking I thought this was like the theory with Gravik and between Gravik and Priscilla and Nick, if they had become like a family unit, and like how that elevates Gravik as like he is the progeny, he is the inheritor that's supposed to be like the heir of Nick Fury, but instead he's a terrorist, and he has kind of taken a look at like a radical turn on his people and his culture needing to survive, and like doing something interesting like that with it. And instead it's left with, you broke your promise.
I mean, that's what I'm saying is like the 30 years of hardship that they're going through, it's impossible to cover that 30 years of hardship when you barely give it lip service over 6 episodes. And so like I just don't care, and it just like because I mean like in reality, if I had to hide who I was for 30 years while constantly being told, hey, we're still looking, we're still trying to find a home for you, like okay, eventually that you reach a breaking point, especially, and like what seems to have been the breaking point for Gravik here is, okay, the blip happens and Fury leaves Earth, so Fury has just walked away from that promise without really relaying to anybody or like or making the commitment or do like anything. So like everybody under him feels abandoned, whereas like Talos has basically, if he hasn't given up on the dream of a new Skrullos like out there among the stars, it's he has become comfortable enough with his life on Earth that like he is kind of moved on from the dream of finding our own home again kind of thing.
Also, by this point he's been exiled from the rest of the Skrulls.
I mean, like
no, I think you're right. I think you are right. I'm not disagreeing. I'm like, where we find like, him at this point.
He is no longer like the general and like the leader of the Skrulls, but the Skrulls, like, I mean, the Skrulls aren't all in Gravik's camp.
Accurate, yes,
is what I would say there.
I'm sorry. I should have prefaced it by like, where we find him is he's kind of on the outs from a lot of folks, including his own daughter.
Yeah.
And there's a lot about.
I mean, like even Priscilla, obviously we find out that she has kind of like been swept up with the Gravik stuff, but like she's conflicted, and she's also just not, all about let me make, like, I mean, like we get enough of a sense, I think, and especially like the fact that there are 1 million Skrulls out there and only like 500 at this compound kind of thing. Like most Skrulls around the world are out there living their life, doing whatever they're like, in hiding, but they're not militarized. They're not, they've not become the zealots that Gravik is looking for.
And really the friction in the Skrull society at this point is really between like three factions. You have Gravik's faction, which are like militants, you have the Council's faction, and then you have kind of just like the basic civilian population of the Skrulls, most of that 1 million people, like you mentioned. Like they're just out living a life. They're not taking up identity. They're not doing espionage work. They're just regular people living a life. Yeah, no, there's a lot about like there's a lot of things about that this had so much potential with, and it just like the story and the events and everything just do not carry, or rather they give so little thought into what they're having these incredible actors do, and it's frustrating. I like that we get to see like a Skrull Rhodey acting like a certainly not a Rhodey person. And also when we find Rhodey, he's in a hospital gown and he can't walk very well. So it's like, okay, how long has he been a Skrull?
Yeah.
They don't do enough to play with the how long have these people been Skrulls to have fun with it, to make it interesting? They're just like, eh.
That's I think the one of the big letdowns for me. It like, yes, there are people out there immediately being like, "Oh, he's in a hospital gown. The last time we saw him in a hospital gown was back in Civil War." And I'm like, "Okay, but the Rhodey that we get in this series is so clearly and starkly a different character than even the Rhodey that we got who popped up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Accurate,
Like, let alone the Rhodey that we had at the end of Endgame saying his goodbye to Tony Stark, basically. So I think if they tried to retcon that and be like, no, he's been a Skrull since Civil War, it's like, well, then why did he just suddenly fucking lose his shit here in the, you know, in the very late series? Like, and logistically, it's because they didn't tell Don Cheadle to be like, hey, by the way, starting now, you're secretly not Rhodey anymore.
Well, because they didn't know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the problem with like all of this kind of like, oh, so if they're trying to retcon that, it's a very cheap retcon that makes no sense with what has been established over the last 5-6 years of Avengers and MCU stuff. So for me, it's way more likely the much more realistic but also boring option of okay, yeah, sometime after Endgame, maybe, because yeah, he gets the crap kicked out of him in Endgame, so highly likely that he would have had to go back in for stuff. But it's also like, hey, they got him in for a surgery or something like that and swiped the body, and boom, there he's in a hospital gown.
Yeah,
like, they're like, I think it's a way more boring option of like, no, he hasn't really been a Skrull all that long. They you know, found an opportunity. Oh, he's now like right hand man to the president. Let's find a time where we can like,
yeah, because
get him and insert our guy.
Prior to that, he's just Tony Hawk. He's just Tony Stark's best friend.
Yeah.
And happens to be like a colonel in the military.
Yeah.
Nothing spectacular or like impressive, like that you'd want to swap out a Skrull for him. Yeah, no, I think that there's just, if you're going to do something like Secret Invasion, you need to have, like, it needs to be better. Like, your material needs to be better. Your characters you're swapping need to be better. Like, the groundwork for this should have been laid way before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And it's so disappointing to see just that lack of foresight and that lack of thought put into this. Or if there was originally the intention to have that foresight and like that action with bolder takes and like more interesting takes on it, and was it just like cut because like, oh, it's a Disney Plus show, so no.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would even say like going so far as to be like, hey, Everett Ross, okay, was he secretly a Skrull in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever? Probably not. Like, nope. That, like, logistically trying to think of how those things work out, probably not.
At the end of Wakanda Forever, he gets busted out by the Wakandans and like basically get taken back. Does that mean there's Skrulls in Wakanda? Like,
yeah,
there's interesting things you can choose to do with it, and they just did not choose to do that.
And that's, yeah. So I think that realistically, the most interesting things would have had to have been like 5 years ago, as they're mapping out this game plan. They look and be like, okay, Secret Invasion is going to be, you know, in such and such a time. So let's grab some performers who are going to be in things between now and then, and like pull them aside, have a secret conversation with them that says, hey, whatever you do in this next movie, just know that you are secretly a Skrull, and this is going to be explored and played out, and we will, you know, reveal that in Secret Invasion.
Not only that, but you could also play with the Marvel fandom, like the super predictive Marvel fandom, by making fake leaks about who's a Skrull or not.
Yeah.
Like, you could have done so, like, it's so frustrating because they could have done so many cool things with this. And I'm just coming up with these off the top of my head. And it's just like, there just was not foresight put into this. There was not marketing put into this. Like, we didn't even know this was dropping until like the week of, and it was popping up on D+. Like, that was wild. The fact that it's Samuel L. Jackson, it's a Nick Fury led show. And like, it's frustrating because like, I love the first 2 episodes because it really sets up what should be an exciting spy thriller. Who can you trust? Who can't you trust? And then it turns out, oh, the people who you could trust the entire time. Like, at no point did you ever really feel like you didn't know who was on whose side.
Yeah, I mean, I would venture a guess, since obviously there's also been like leadership changes at Disney since this was greenlit and stuff. But I would not be surprised if Bob Iger was basically like, "Hey, like Disney Plus is already losing us a whole bunch of money. Let's not throw good money after bad and like waste money on promoting this. The MCU people who are going to watch it are going to watch it. We're not going to bring in a whole bunch of new eyes if we throw, millions of dollars of marketing in this one." And it's like they knew what they had too. They knew it wasn't, the like people who were out there being like, maybe this will be the Andor for the MCU. It's like, no, Disney knew this was not the Andor for the MCU.
That's why they
Like,
didn't promote it like the way they promoted Andor.
exactly.
Yeah. It's rough. It's just rough and it's sad because I think that there's a lot of potential here that just got just thrown to the dogs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is like, there were a few little bright lights, across the episodes. A lot of them were just like nice character moments, be it, Gravik and Talos, confronting one another, or like the Talos and Nick Fury stuff, I think was really good. The Nick Fury and Priscilla stuff, by and large worked for me. Introducing this, brand new character out of nowhere who ends up being this very pivotal relationship in Fury's life.
Which should have like when it was revealed in episode 2 felt impactful, and then it just lost that impact as the episodes went on. I still like it. I still like the chemistry of the characters and everything like that. Like I think, like I said, the acting and the characters are spectacular. It's just what the situations they're put in and how the whole thing's plotted out that really feels flat for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree on that. I think their relationship was the arc that was most interestingly built over the course of the season. Like it's an interesting reveal end of the second episode. Is she a secret Skrull, or does Nick know she's a Skrull? And like obviously I think also even in that episode we'd had like, we'd been introduced to her in Skrull form. So of course,
yeah, he knew.
Nick knows the face. So it still became like okay, did a Skrull take over Nick's wife in the interim, or did Nick or did Fury marry a Skrull? And obviously we find out no, he they had built this relationship over the years. We see them in flashbacks, and especially their
poem.
I mean the poem was the poem I found out throw this in trivia. The poem was written by the author while he was on his deathbed of cancer. So there's a nice little kind of analogy there between the poem and the face that Priscilla Vara took. Yeah,
because that's fascinating.
Being the end of life person. So yeah, I like their dynamic up to and including the reveal and the kind of that conversation of okay, they're both there, guns on the table. They know they're there to try and kill each other, and they know they've walked into this, and they have this heart to heart of okay, she tells the story of the three promises she'd made kind of thing, and that the nice little fake out of okay, they both pull the gun, both shoot, and both don't shoot each other. They both make the decision to miss for their love. I was like, that's a very that alone tells me more about this relationship with that Fury has had in the shadows, more than I think a lot of dialogue scenes could have done. And
I agree.
There is also this realization, and I think I was thinking about this in the lead up to the finale, where I always liken to when we spend time with these characters. I think the example I've given the most often, going to the video game space, when people were like, how do you introduce a secret brother to Nate Drake? And I'm like, we've met and followed Nathan Drake on 30 hours of his life. Incredibly high pressure, strenuous 30 hours of his life.
30 of some of the most important hours of his life.
but it's also highly possible and highly likely that he's not going to bring up the trauma of having lost his brother 15 years ago in those 30 hours we've met him. So like
Yeah.
we have seen these characters and we know these characters for so little time. It's obviously a very important time because yes, you're putting them into a movie or a TV show. It's typically going to be the most important time of their life kind of thing. But it was the I was thinking about that the stat that had been pulled where it was like Bruno in Miss Marvel had more screen time in the MCU than Nick Fury did at the end of Miss Marvel. Like somebody had gone out and calculated out like screen time by minute for characters kind of thing, and Bruno, the sidekick in Miss Marvel, had more time because of just the nature of a Disney Plus show than
Yeah.
Fury's, various pop-ups over the years, including, the big bulk of his time would have been in Captain Marvel. So like that's it. Like, so going into this, we really knew very little about Nick Fury.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So like even there, they can get away with being like, oh yeah, he's had a secret wife all this time.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's totally believable.
Yeah.
Especially because it's like, well, did anybody know? It's like, no, but it's Nick Fury. Like, why would
Yeah.
you? Nick Fury's not going to tell you about his wife, and that's why I thought the idea of him having like a son as well would be interesting because it'd be like, yeah, Nick Fury's not going to tell you about his family because Nick Fury doesn't want to compromise his personal life.
Yeah. Real quick, you've knocked yourself out of focus somehow.
I have?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So like that was another thought that I had over the course of this is like, it's cool that we're getting to see this much more of Nick Fury. I think much like, with Loki before this, or with like Wanda and Vision in particular, like really with like all of these characters, including like Falcon, Winter Soldier, giving them more time instead of they are, the third tier characters in an MCU movie, so they get very little screen time. Bringing them to the forefront, I think, is a good opportunity to explore those characters. And yeah, ultimately, this one just ends up being like, okay, there are some interesting moments there. There's some interesting scenes or sequences, but at the end of the day, this is going to be incredibly forgettable. And also, how impactful is this going to be on the MCU at large? The show definitely wants to like suggest that it's going to have a major ramifications with Ritzen's very inflammatory speech leading to, again, just a very violent like
oh yeah
hit squad coming in and just taking out the Christopher McDonald's like Fox News person in a very violent assault,
and then just as violent the Prime Minister of Britain.
I mean, yeah, like worse so, yeah, being the Prime Minister who we had seen previously was a Skrull, and we saw the real one kind of getting rescued there with Rhodey and Everett Ross and stuff. So to see that like she had reassumed her life and still gets gunned down, it's very much like okay, like there is violence that has been incited by Ritson. Also shout out to the woman who had walked away from the council stuff earlier, basically like fighting off wannabe assaults and assassination.
Absolute badass moment. She was so sick there.
But at the end of the day, like when like the earliest we might revisit these ideas, I guess would be the Captain America New World Order next year. If they explore that, well, so the ramification is like, oh yeah, Ritson's going to be a one-term president. We've already heard like casting reports and rumors and whatnot that Harrison Ford taking over Thunderbolt Ross is going to be President Ross in that movie.
Oh, that'll be rad.
So yeah, either Ritson is, eliminated by his own petard or whatever, or just, yeah, gets voted out in favor of a like more established military person that will go on and do the Thunderbolts. But like realistically, like even that's going to be an afterthought for whatever Captain America stuff is going on in that I guess Brave New World. I think I may have said New World Order because they renamed the the name of that movie. But yeah, it's like realistically the next time we'll get like any kind of, I think, substantive stuff on this would be like Armor Wars, when we'll which is also now a movie and not a Disney Plus series anymore, which I had not caught until doing some research on this. So like you know, none of this is going to immediately be in play in the Marvels, which is the next thing up. Obviously, Loki is doing still its whole thing with the multiverse and the Kang saga stuff. So, that's not going to be coming to fruition anytime soon. So it's like, okay, you end this on a very violent and a very dark tone for the world because it's the most impactful ending you have. But if this is another chapter in the broader MCU story, it's like, okay, but like nothing the MCU has done thus far has really given any confidence that they're going to tie this in any kind of meaningful way. Like if you go back to WandaVision and be like, oh, okay, Wanda's going from WandaVision into Multiverse of Madness, and then it ends up being a very different Wanda than we left in WandaVision and stuff like that. And it's I'm just I just don't have faith that like any of this really is going to matter in the grand scheme of this story they're telling. So it just ends, and let alone the fact that you've now got Gaia out there who is just superpowered beyond belief with all of the superpowers.
Yep.
It's like, okay, so so she's just going to be out there working in secret with the British government kind of thing.
That's another thing too. It's like, I don't get like, I'm with you. I don't know where this goes. What a shocking and deliberate ending that is not going to get followed up with anywhere, because what's the point of following up with it? Like, I feel like for such a massive interconnected universe, they've made it so massive. Does any of it interconnect anymore?
Yeah, it is the coming out of 5 years later, everybody was like, okay, there's going to be so many interesting stories you can tell coming out of the blip, and like how did the world change and all that stuff. And it's always just like an afterthought. It's, you get occasionally a really cool scene of like, here's the blip from so-and-so's perspective. But by and large, it's like, they're not interested in telling those stories. They're interested in telling big, bombastic, epic stories. This one, like, ultimately it's just like, okay, this, like, there are a few cool actiony sequences. I'm very glad that I came those first episodes kind of like, all right, my expectations are pretty much what I've come to expect from these things. I'm not going in expecting the world. I'm going in expecting mediocre, because that's by and large what the MCU series and Disney Plus stuff have been. And so ultimately, like, I walked away like, that was pretty much what I expected it to be. I don't regret the time watching it, but I'm, very rarely going to think about it, and I will never have any reason to go back and rewatch this stuff. So it's just kind of like, that's a thing that happened. I will again shout out Olivia Colman, fucking amazing in her role.
Absolutely.
She's like the most fun like revelation out of this is just her character. And I did like, again, I go back to, especially like in the flashback sequences and stuff, I really liked the Priscilla and Fury dynamic that we got to see.
Their diner dinner dynamic was just always so good.
Yeah. And
I loved when he's talking to Sonia at the graveyard, and he says, the two most, he was between the single mother who, put the brain between my ears, and the woman who put the ring around my finger. And it's like, okay, like, Nick Fury is such he has such an attitude and an air of like control around himself that, Samuel Jackson does Nick Fury the way Nick Fury should be, as a super spy. You never at any point in time feel like Nick Fury really is like, there's very few times where Nick Fury doesn't have an out or doesn't have a way of how he's planning to do something. And so getting to see this moment of like vulnerability with somebody who he's known for years, him and Sonya, like, from their interaction in the first 2 episodes, like you knew these two go back. These are like Cold War. It felt familiar to me because, and I realize it now, it's the way I felt about Robert Redford's character in Winter Soldier, and him and Nick Fury's their interactions of like, this is an ancient war by modern standards. Like we're talking events that happened 60 years ago. End of the 70s, early 80s, like, neither of us were born yet. And we are, contemporary adults within the MCU, like, timeline of things, if you really want to look at it that way. So we're talking about, like, these are really old ancient warriors whose wars should be over and they should be done. And it's like, I think that is, despite the fact that, like, Nick Fury is an empty shell of himself, it's like, is he?
I mean, yeah, like,
because he seems to pick right back up.
If you put him in the, the age range that Samuel L. Jackson is, he's in his 70s.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he's past retirement. Obviously, he's not, and that's even another thing is like, okay, he starts the series coming down from space, ends the series going back up to space, and it is just like, okay, all this stuff happened, and he just gets to just keep, like, he has a very confrontational now dynamic with the president. So. And they're just cool with sending him back up. Like who's funding Sword or whatever's up there? Saber.
I feel like Saber like Shield. In the comic books, it's always the U.S., but in the films, it was like always like UN or like international. Because in the end of Avengers, when he goes before like the council,
I mean, Shield started out coming out of because it came out of what I always forget, like SIS or whatever. Like it comes out of that camp in New Jersey from Captain America. Like
right, but that's where camp was also like a coordinated effort between England and the United States.
I didn't get that as much. Like I only get that maybe if I give credence to Peggy being one of its founders, kind of thing, being with the backing of the UK, but by and large, it seems to be like a U.S. led thing, and I mean, all of Agent Carter is basically like, she's here, and they don't really want her to be here, kind of thing.
Well, a thing about it is also like, so it's, if you really look at it, the foundation of it is SIS and what is essentially the pre-CIA, like the Army intelligence that you get out of World War II. That gets moved into SHIELD, essentially being a quote unquote CIA type org that seems to have like international like stuff going on. And then you end up with it being like, because in the council, when he goes before them, there's people with like from different nationalities that are part of that coalition, that council. And so I never picked it up as it being a purely US thing, so much as like the president of the United States has a lot of say and a lot of sway over it. But end of the day, it's not like it never felt like it was solely part of and I think part of it is also like we're used to the U.S. military just doing whatever the hell it wants all around the world.
Yeah.
And so I think when we see SHIELD doing kind of whatever they want all around the world, we're like, well, yeah, that's the U.S. military. And I think that there's enough hints and context in the MCU to be like, actually, they're broader. They are like worldwide.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it's still like, I mean, like if in episode 2, Skrull Rhodey, who I've seen people, take to calling him Scrody.
I like that. That's good.
At the end of the day, like he fires Nick Fury, and it's like, okay, so he seemingly the American government has some power over Nick Fury still.
On some level, yeah. But I like it also, like they are not clear cut on it whatsoever. You're not wrong. They are not clear cut on it. I just think there's enough of an emphasis for it being also. I guess also just because he's on the outs with the president doesn't mean that like he didn't save the world again.
Yeah. Or at least he saved the president's life a couple times. So he gets a single pass.
Also, dick move for the president, considering the fact that like the world also knows a Skrull saved your life, dude.
Yeah.
Like they even like that's Talos literally like gave his life to save the president. And the president just like, fuck them aliens.
Yep.
And it's like, what a piece of shit. Dermot, you are better than that, sir. You took a beautiful redhead to her sister's wedding in England.
I mean, the analog that immediately comes across my mind right now is Mark DeSantis being like, fuck Disney World, while having had like his wedding at Disney World.
Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, like he got married at Disney World and
yeah,
everything, like, did the whole thing, but now he's like, Disney's woke.
Yeah, douchey bullshit hypocrisy politics. It's gonna happen. So yeah, it'll be interesting again.
It comes off as, I don't like that I got tricked. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, even more so, I think it just comes across as like okay, we're going to make this character a little bit more the like xenophobic sentiment that we, obviously have also seen in the real world in recent years.
Absolutely.
So let's just make him that kind of an analog character so that, when General Ross comes in and becomes President Ross, he'll be, a hero on the other side kind of thing of the, or maybe I don't know. Again, so much of this is just like, I don't really trust them to follow up on any of these threads particularly well.
Especially with how Bob Iger's been lately. Yeah. Like, ever since Bob Iger took full control back, it's felt like it has not been good vibes for MCU, Disney Plus stuff.
Yeah, let alone all of the actors and writers strike stuff right now. Mm-hmm. Who knows when some of these things, like, and I don't know what all is like already in production or what already is like in
Wonder
post-production.
Man was in production because the writer strike shut it down.
Yeah, there you go. That's a one I'd even forgotten was happening. Same with like Deadpool 3 is out there somewhere. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, if any of this stuff comes back into play, but I just don't really expect it will. One thing we didn't really talk about, what did you think of the Gaia Gravik fight at the end? That was basically like, hey, here's where all of our budget's going to go.
I thought that the reveal was really cool. I dug the reveal because the moment that it stops the fist, I was like, oh, it's Gaia. And it's like, I put all the pieces together, and then it's like, oh, that means Nick Fury's back saving the president. And it's like, that's a smart way of doing it. That's really cool. I dug that. On the flip side, I also felt like it was very uncreative with its action in that moment. It felt like they had the budget for like 9 superpowers, and that's it. So
yeah, it also just begs the question of like, okay, how does any of this work? How are you immediately able to understand, oh, I now have telekinetic powers like Ebony Maw, and I can just fling you across the room. But I'm not going to always use that. Sometimes a lot of the time, I'm just going to resort to Abomination or Cull Obsidian Fist or whatever. Like so much of it just did come back to, all right, biggest muscles wins.
Yep.
And it's like, but there are so many powers in that moveset, in those various movesets.
I dug the Mantis getting pulled out at the end to kind of like give her the up on that. I was like, that's smart. I dug that. But also like maybe bring out some powers we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, I thought the Extremis was great. I love that Extremis pull.
Yeah, Extremis, like I thought Ghost was an interesting pull.
Yes.
From Ant-Man and the Wasp. Some of it is also the realization of like, oh, that's right. Like, like Tony Stark wasn't superpowers either, just a bunch of mech stuff. If anything, and obviously they're not going to be able to pull Spider-Man powers into this with the Sonyverse. But yeah, it was just kind of like okay, we got a handful of powers, and they just immediately know how to use all of them. It seems.
It is what it is. We are like it's in the past. From my look at it, it's like it's in the past. It's fine. It's not bad. Like none of this is bad. It's just mediocre.
Yeah,
which is really sad to say with the cast that it has and like the quality of the caliber of acting that's being brought to the show. It coming out as a mediocre project is just disheartening. I don't see this, like, I'm not one of those naysayers like, this is the end of the MCU. It's not. It's just, I think that this is, and I don't even think it's a problem of the Disney Plusification. I just don't think that this was I just don't think there was good stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like, especially the recent run, it feels like they're telling stories because they have to keep telling as many stories because of shareholders and stuff, more than because they have stories to tell.
Yeah, I would, like I said, I would have found it being to be a lot more interesting with a lot more angles about the ideas of legacy and homeland, and like that they really could have investigated and dug deeper into this, and it's just very shallow instead.
Yeah, like they did a little bit there with like with refugee, like the idea
Yeah, but
of refugee status, but yeah,
they
like
barely scrape it.
yeah,
It's there's so much rich material here for them to have mined into, gotten political, gotten historical, like even if it's not controversial, just getting into it. Like we've been like Europe's been dealing with refugee crises for the last 20 like for the last 15 years.
it's also, I mean, like it's the same refugee crisis stuff they dealt with in Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Yeah.
which they also didn't do well there.
No.
So there's like a second attempt, and they still missed.
And I don't know if it's I don't know if it's like restraint from like executives or what, but it is there's opportunities for bold storytelling, and they are just not even stepping up to the plate on that. And that's the disappointment. I would have preferred if they had like gone big with the what they were trying to say with this, and because I feel like Winter Soldier had a lot to say about surveillance state, about like a lot of great a commentary on spies and what it means to have a what it really looks like to have a suit of armor around the world, but what that means when you're on the world that the suit of armor is around. This idea of like quote unquote security, but how quickly it can be turned against you and used to become tyranny. And also giving a massive shout out to how super messed up it was that we took a bunch of Nazi scientists and people and just like brought them over to the U.S. War criminals, and just like gave them cushy jobs and good lives here. Like a lot that got said about that in a very veiled way in with Winter Soldier. Following it up here, I will say also just like it's just Falcon and Winter Soldier I felt at least tried to say something. It just didn't give it enough focus, enough time. This was all of that focus and time that they could have used to really flesh out that sort of story. Especially, what is it like being a refugee when the world doesn't even know that you're a refugee in it? Like, you could have taken that angle for some folks, but you just don't. And it's just bad. Sorry, not bad. It's not bad. It's just disappointing and mediocre.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, any last favorite moments or anything you want to give a shout out to that we haven't covered or haven't touched?
Yeah, I like that they didn't give Talos and Gaia a a reconciliation in their last moments with each other. It felt very real and that's a very brutal scene when Gaia says like, I really I don't get a chance to like take that back. And I'm like, that's a very real thing to feel, and I respect that they decided to go with that rather than go with something a lot nicer. Talos also getting like murked the way he does and like getting like offed, and his body kind of like being left by Nick because Nick has to get the president out of there, and like what like that like there's a lot of that like I appreciated that they did that gave it a very like brutal sense. And I will say the way in which the violence of certain characters like Gravik is executed when he like during the mutinies from the other scrolls, like it felt very like they like also shout out to them figuring out ways to try to kill him. If like now that he's a semi super scroll, like I dug that this like how just like how gross it was seeing them put a bag over his head.
Yeah.
And like zip tie, like trying to do that. I'm like, that is brutal and executed flawlessly. A lot of the action was just phenomenal in this show. It's just a shame.
Yep. All right. Well, we will go ahead and dive into the report card then, where we grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give Secret Invasion?
C-.
C-?
Just a C- for me. I almost gave it a D+, but the action I think keeps it from going that low.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good spot for it. C- for me as well. Again, like there were little glimmers of good throughout, and yeah, performance wise, lots of great performances. They just weren't asked to do a ton. and the script just didn't really support that, or like the script supported them fine sometimes. The story didn't support them.
No.
So it was just kind of like, yeah, big old broad letdown. Well, extra credit, other suggestions if you did like this. Disney Plus will recommend Captain Marvel, What If, Avengers Age of Ultron, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Avengers, Captain America the First Avenger, and Iron Man 2. And then I throw in there, once again, The Falcon and Winter Soldier as another potential option for you. Extracurriculars, did you watch anything else on Disney Plus, Cameron? Or was it just catching up on
I
this?
just caught up, but I'm looking forward to watching American Born Chinese.
That's what I was gonna say. I did watch American Born Chinese when I made the decision to not start watching Secret Invasion Monday night. I was like, I've been hearing good things about American Born Chinese. Let me go ahead and watch that. Watched the first episode. Came out, told you like, yeah, really enjoying it, and then I went and watched the rest of the season that night. Stayed up until like 2 or 3 in the morning just watching American Born Chinese. Really good stuff. Especially interestingly shot, and there's one episode, I think like episode 4. It's an 8-episode season, full season 1. It's kind of like a full story arc based on a graphic novel of the same name. And like episode 4 in particular is very much like okay, we're going to tell a like throwback Chinese story about the like older generation of characters in this story, and so we're going to do that through the lens of like 70s like Chinese cinema kind of stuff, and they throw on filters and everything, and the whole episode, I think it entirely is in Mandarin with subtitles, like no English spoken in that episode whatsoever. And I was like, I am fascinated by like them doing this. And yeah, great cast across the board. Ki Hui Kwan has a fun kind of ongoing role in a very what was it? Like the like Balky, I think was the character's name. He's basically that, but like Asian stereotype from a like Full House era sitcom kind of thing that is
okay.
Is kind of getting like a resurgence on a Netflix-esque kind of streaming service.
Okay.
And so it's very like his character has become like a meme because it's like, oh yeah, this is not great. It's the like, oh, a thing happens and he's like, what could go wrong? Because his name is Wong. Ha 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 ha.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oof.
And so like him, like he has some really great scenes throughout that are like him struggling with like, it's been 30 years and he can't escape that character, even though he's living a completely different life now and stuff like that.
I gotta watch it. This sounds really amazing.
Good. Yeah, he of course has some great standout stuff in large part because so much of it is, and like some of his like real late season stuff is just a beautiful mirror of like the things he was saying during his Everything Everywhere All at Once run of like when this character was created 30 years ago, those kinds of things weren't on, like an Asian actor couldn't get work and stuff like that, and then afterwards still couldn't. So it mirrors his struggle in a way. Michelle Yeoh's in there as well, as kind of the like Chinese goddess of mercy, is a cool character. It's a very interesting story, and I think one also that like just did a cool job of kind of like opening my eyes up to Chinese imagery and symbology and mythology and stuff like that, that I hadn't really been exposed to. So definitely gets a recommendation from me. American Born Chinese, and the young like the older cast of characters that are like established, like they're holding their own, obviously, but the younger kind of like high school cast also does a pretty good job, and kind of they're like relatable, fun, and not like cheesy Disney Channel original movie kind of acting levels. They're doing good. So yeah, shout out to that. Oh, and also the main character is very much like there's a lot of interesting, like his family dynamic. His parents have been like married for a long time, but they're kind of like, having some troubles, and how those troubles seep into, his life and stuff like that is also interesting. And also how those troubles are kind of mirrored in other characters' dynamics and relationships. Like there's a lot of cool symmetry across storylines and arcs and stuff like that over the course of the series. So yeah.
I mean, you sold me before already, and I was on board. Now, like when you told me about it, you're like, yeah, it's good. I was like, okay, I'll check it out. Now I'm definitely sold. This sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, really good stuff. So yeah, definitely check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, well, that is going to do it for this episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about Secret Invasion. Wish we had enjoyed it better. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, give a shout out to the fact that like you're not gonna see us for a little while. Yeah, like this is a kind of like a weird time for us, programming wise, because like a lot is happening all at once, and who knows what will end up happening. But I will say, you'll get into the proper explanation in a little bit, but just know that we're still here, we're still thinking about what we're going to be doing, and we're really excited for still what we have. We're getting ready for putting out, so look forward to some good stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J Starkey. I will shout out effectively like, hey, go check out like any of our recent content that you may have missed, because yes, this is our last D Plus show for at least a couple weeks. I'm flying out to Orlando next week for a work conference, followed by like just a vacation so like there's just going to be a couple weeks there where nobody will be around. Logan is also like driving across the country for a move to California. So he'll be unavailable. And so yeah, just there's not like a ton in the way of stuff we can do with so few people around. So
because it's just me.
And you're gonna be Cameron for a little bit, and then even after that, yeah, like Cameron will be going to PAX West.
PAX West,
so that'll be a thing at the end of August / early September. But yeah, as a result, rather than trying to do like what we've done occasionally in the past of like, all right, we're gonna just record a whole bunch of stuff and then have it all ready to go, so we don't miss a beat. It's like I didn't feel like doing that, especially. Like we have just done a whole bunch of like long form series of Let's Plays. Wasn't really an interest in doing that.
Yeah, we literally just finished like simultaneously. We finished 2 long-term Let's Play series, Jedi Fallen Order and your Tears of the Kingdom, which you started right after your Breath of the Wild playthrough stuff. So
that was like right after Skyrim. Like I've been doing a lot of like long form
Let's Plays.
Let's Plays.
So if you like, we have lots of content. If you really want to like check out our other stuff, like if you haven't checked it out, like we've done a lot of really fun Let's Plays. Even just like It Takes Two that you did with Logan a while back. Like that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So go check those out. We need the numbers. We need the views. Also, some folks might have noticed that our podcasts are showing up on like a podcast feed for YouTube. You're welcome. Only That D Plus show and That Nerdy Site show are that way, because wouldn't make sense otherwise. But
yeah, I did see those when I've been adding things to the playlist. I'm like, oh, these have a podcast thing now. I wonder if Cameron did that.
I wonder
if like Disney. I wonder if YouTube is just like reading the algorithm, because like we also have a lot of like sub playlists, like. This in addition to going into the That D Plus show playlist, this will go into that D Plus show Marvel playlist of things. So yeah, there are any number of those things.
It was a quick thing. It's like, oh yeah, they do podcasts, like they do a podcast feed on YouTube now. Yes, I would like these two feeds to go, these 2 playlists to go into podcasts, and it's like done. And it was so minor, I totally forgot about it until just now.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, that is going to do it. You can follow all of us and all the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site. Like I said, I'm out. I go back to work on like the 17th. I'll get back a couple days sooner than that. So one of the things we talked about was maybe we'll come back end of August with some Amazing Spider-Man episodes, because theoretically Amazing Spider-Man 2 is supposed to be coming to Disney Plus here in the next couple weeks. So we can kind of like revisit our Spider-Man conversations, and but a lot of that is also going to be contingent on like, hey, how quickly does Logan get set back up and is able to do stuff, or is he even going to have free time to do stuff in his new actions and abilities and stuff? So we'll find out. But yes, stay tuned for whenever we come back. We'll have that. We will let you know on Twitter, unless Twitter also falls by the wayside sometime in the next couple weeks. Increasingly a possibility, it would seem. But one way or another, we'll be back. You follow all the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site. So yeah, go to That Nerdy Site. I did just re-up the license on That Nerdy Site stuff for another year or two. So, at least our stuff will be published there, if nowhere else. But if you liked what you heard, please like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.